Welcome to Common Ground, the podcast where we explore how seemingly separate issues are actually deeply connected. I'm Michael.
And I'm Sarah. Today we're diving into episode 3, titled Housing, Homelessness, Labor, and Immigration Intersections. We're going to unpack how these critical issues are far more interconnected than most people realize.
Let's start with some sobering numbers. Over the past 20 years, we've seen homelessness in America surge dramatically. Today, more than 771,000 people are experiencing homelessness on any given night. That's not just a statistic, that represents hundreds of thousands of our neighbors, families, and fellow Americans who lack the most basic human need, shelter.
And here's where labor issues come into play in ways most people don't consider. When workers get injured on the job, they often find themselves caught in an inadequate workers' compensation system that leaves them financially devastated. I've seen cases where someone hurt their back in construction, couldn't work, and received compensation that barely covered their medical bills, let alone their rent or mortgage.
Exactly. And when you can't make rent because your workers' comp benefits are insufficient, you're facing eviction. Once you're evicted, finding new housing becomes exponentially harder. Many employers won't hire people without stable addresses. It becomes this vicious cycle where workplace injuries directly pipeline people into homelessness.
And then, to make matters worse, this year's Supreme Court ruling in City of Grants Pass versus Johnson essentially gave cities the green light to criminalize homelessness. This ruling allows cities to ban camping and sleeping in public spaces, even when no shelter beds are available.
Think about the cruelty of that logic. We have systems that can push workers into homelessness, and now we're making it illegal to be homeless. Where exactly are these people supposed to go? This ruling essentially criminalizes poverty itself.
Now let's talk about how we got here. Since 2007, we've seen a systematic erosion of both worker protections and immigrant rights. The financial crisis was used as justification to cut safety nets, weaken unions, and create more precarious working conditions. Meanwhile, immigration policies became increasingly punitive, creating fear and vulnerability in immigrant communities.
And here's where private equity enters the picture. These firms had discovered they can profit immensely from vulnerable populations. They buy up affordable housing and convert it to market rate. They purchase mobile home parks and jack up lot rents. They even invest in companies that provide services to homeless populations, creating perverse incentives to maintain rather than solve the problem.
It's worth noting that immigrant communities, despite facing increased persecution, continue to contribute enormously to our economy. In 2023 alone, undocumented immigrants paid $26.2 billion into Social Security, money they may never be able to claim. They're literally subsidizing benefits for other Americans while being denied basic protections themselves.
Which brings us to political failures. We've seen politicians from both parties make grand promises about addressing homelessness, fixing immigration, and protecting workers. Yet the problems persist and often worsen. Campaign promises get forgotten once donors and lobbyists weigh in.
So what are the solutions? First, we need comprehensive workers' compensation reform that actually protects injured workers from falling into poverty. This means adequate benefits, faster processing, and protection from employer retaliation.
We need to treat housing as a human right, not a commodity. This means regulating private equity's role in housing markets, expanding affordable housing development, and implementing strong tenant protections. We also need to reverse the Supreme Court's criminalization of homelessness.
Immigration reform is crucial too. We need pathways to legal status that acknowledge immigrants' contributions to our society and economy. This includes allowing undocumented workers to claim the Social Security benefits they've paid into and protecting them from exploitation.
Ultimately, we need universal safety nets that catch people before they fall through the cracks. Universal health care, guaranteed housing assistance, and robust unemployment benefits would prevent many of the pathways to homelessness we've discussed today.
So what can you, our listeners, do? First, get informed about these issues in your own community. Attend city council meetings. Contact your representatives about workers' compensation reform and housing policy. Support organizations working directly with homeless populations and immigrant communities.
Vote in local elections. They often have the most direct impact on housing and homelessness policies. And remember, these issues are connected. Supporting worker rights helps prevent homelessness. Protecting immigrant communities strengthens our entire social fabric.
We'll have links to specific organizations and actions you can take in our show notes. Remember, these problems didn't happen overnight, and they won't be solved overnight. But when we understand how they're connected, we can work on comprehensive solutions rather than just treating symptoms.
Thanks for joining us on Common Ground. I'm Michael.
And I'm Sarah. Until next time, keep looking for the connections that can help us build a more just society.
You are